Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Hawes from Book Club Babel, and I'm welcoming Augustus Rose here to talk about his book, The ReadyMade Thief. I think you go by Gus.
Go by Gus, yes.
Gus. Hi, Gus. Welcome.
Amy.
We're so happy to have you. I'm particularly thrilled. As you can imagine, I review books. I read a lot of them. Many of them I enjoy. Yours was something really unique and really, really beautiful, and a lot of complex notions in there, but it was really accessible. And that got me thinking a little bit about how intrigued you personally are by the notion of opposites or extremes or things that seem so different but really aren't.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I hadn't really thought about that before, but I think I'm always pinging back and forth between various extremes and trying to find some middle ground with them. And I think the book itself, as you'll see, there's, as you've probably seen when you read it, I mean, there's so many weird, disparate elements going on at once. And there's science and alchemy, which are kind of two opposite extremes in a way. There's urban exploration, and there's secret societies, and the dark net, and there's hallucinogenic drugs, and there's art theory, and all of those kind of just strange outlier elements, all of which I'm totally kind of fixated on, and tried to bring together into one book and have them somehow fit within a world that made sense within the book. And so
is it sort of a showcase of things that you find interesting?
It kind of is. People who know me said it's like reading your brain that's been done to a page. But this is something, when it started in some ways from working at a used bookstore many, many years ago. And I would, this great old used bookstore called Green Apple Books in San Francisco that I used to work in. And I used to haul books up to sort, and I would find these strange, fringy titles that I had no idea existed, and on areas of knowledge I had no idea really existed, like at the time, urban exploration and these strange, fringier science theories, and Marcel Duchamp. I discovered Duchamp at that time, and I amassed a library over the years, and that's kind of where all this stuff ended up coming from. And I've been wanting to write a book using all, because I love research. I love learning about things. I love discovering things and following my curiosity. And so I just kind of I'm a generalist at heart. I love kind of just figuring out areas that I'm interested in and learning as much as I can. And then I had to figure out what a novel would look like, kind of trying to fit all of these elements within it.
So did that become unwieldy at times?
Oh, completely. Yeah. The first draft of this novel was absolutely an unwieldy mess. It was probably, another 300 pages, and it was just bloated and messy and went all over the place. I don't like to outline. It kind of takes the fun out of it for me. I like the sense of discovery, of following my character and seeing where she takes me, and forcing her to make choices that are not always the best choices, but that lead in interesting narrative directions. And so, a lot of times those directions aren't fruitful. They don't serve the story, and end up with a big mess. And so, yeah, it was a big, messy, inchoate thing that I had no idea what it was before I started.
Yeah. So speaking of that, let's talk about your main character, Lee, for a little bit. She's an unusual heroine. I loved her, and I liked her because she was unusual. But how did she develop? Was she that way at first, or did the story tell you who she was? Tell us about that unfolding.
Well, when I knew like I said, I kind of knew all the background of the book and the world that it needed to exist in sort of underground Philadelphia, sort of another world of Philadelphia, this almost alternate reality. And I didn't really know what the story was. I didn't have a character, and I got itchy to start writing. And I sort of had a vision of this young woman sitting in a derelict aquarium outside of Philadelphia, staring into another one of my obsessions are those old Cambrian seascape dioramas that you would see sometimes in natural history museums. And she's staring into a tank of this old diorama, and she sees a note that's been left for her there. And it seems impossible because nobody's supposed to know that she's there. And that ended up being the prologue, but that's a point that ended up, I realized it takes place halfway into the book. And so I knew that was my character, and I brought her back, and I started her from being a young girl and wrote to that point and sort of learned about Lee and who she was and what drives her and what her kind of deepest fears are and motivations. And she thinks she feels invisible in high school, and yet she deeply wants and needs to be seen at the same time. And also she feels kind of safe in that invisibility. There's this real pull with that. And I remember feeling like that in high school myself a lot. So I sort of pulled from that from my own experience. But then, Lee's she's got a lot more courage and drive and determination than I ever did in high school. And she certainly became her own person.
Right. And it's interesting, she latches on to shoplifting, but as I was reading it reminded me, I'm like old enough, that story about Winona Ryder who like shoplift, she had so much money, she was successful, but she was shoplifting anyway. And then it's really like, it's more like a proving you have the power thing versus actually getting the stuff. And do you think that applies to Lee?
Definitely. She's kind of she believes so much that she is invisible, that nobody sees her, that she starts shoplifting, and she realizes it scratches an itch in her. And at first she's stealing little things, baubles from friends, or not even friends, but classmates when she's really young. And it's a kind of way for her to connect to people in some way, just stealing something of theirs and having it. She doesn't really have any friends. And then in high school, she realizes that she can steal things and people will pay her for these things and ask her to get things for them. And that, that's a business for her, but it's also a way of connecting to people, of being part of it.
It's what gets her friends, right? That's how she gets Edie, as a friend.
What gets her friends. And so,
yeah. Her ability to do that. Okay, let's talk about the Société Anonyme. Is that how do you pronounce that? Anonyme. Anonyme. There you go. And I took French, but it's been a while. So interestingly, we were talking about before how she seems invisible, and there's this secret society that's sort of chasing her. You don't know why for so much of the book, and I have to give you a compliment that you don't mind not knowing why. Sometimes I feel like an author is just trying to string me along to keep me reading the book, and it feels forced. But the way that you put this together is very genuine, and it works. But I was thinking about how that notion of the teenager who feels alone or feels isolated, and these kind of societies that are secret, or clubs, or even gangs, kind of prey on that notion of the one that feels outside of everything and gives them a family. How much did that come into your creation of the society?
That was everything. I mean, that's how she gets sucked in. I mean, she early on in the book, she finds herself in a juvenile detention center, and then she escapes, but she's alone. She has no friends. She can't go back to her family. She has no money. And she finds herself at this place called the Crystal Castle, which used to be a co-op of homeless kids, runaways and throwaways, all working together cooperatively. And it seemed, they bring her in, and it seems like she's found a home. They see her. She feels really kind of the sort of, there's one girl who's kind of a recruiter for them named Esther, and Esther, she's just, she feels that tingle when Esther's looking at her, that seeing. And so, yeah, they I think, she feels part of something, and that's what brings her into them. Of course, she soon realizes that she's not there by accident, that there's something else going on, and that she's not just another kind of homeless kid who's fallen into this world. There's something different, and that's kind of where the mystery starts, that you talk about, that you mentioned, of like who the society anonyme is, and what they see in Lee. And I think the reason why it worked, it didn't seem forced, is that I didn't know the answer to that myself a lot of the way through the book, and I was finding that out myself through Lee, and just following her and focusing on her character rather than the architecture of the plot. If I had done that first and outlined it, I think it might have come off more forced.
So in a way, it's interesting because your book is so much about art, and it's almost like, the artist who has to have faith that they're going to make something that other people want to look at when they're just kind of following that intuition. What was it like for you to just have faith in that, in your inspiration, your intuition, and finding the next stepping stone to create the story, that you weren't going to run out of stepping stones?
I mean, for this book, when I was, I never felt I was going to run out of stepping stones. I felt like I had so much to work with, especially with the art of Marcel Duchamp, who I realized I've been fixated on him for so long that I thought everybody was kind of knew as much as I did, and I don't even know that much. I mean, there are like people who are like completely obsessed with him, but most of the world I found has no idea anymore who Duchamp was. But I've also found that people who've read the book come out of the book wanting to know a lot more, and were compelled to keep putting the book down and Googling his work, because he's such a fascinating artist, both his life and his work. It's all interconnected, and there's layers and layers of meaning and puzzle in there to work out. And I found that really, it was just a lot of fuel for the book to keep finding new angles to kind of push it and to go in, and that was where the real fun, or part of the real fun of writing it, came from, I think. Right.
And also, I mean, another compliment, I'm a fangirl for this book. I really, really loved it. You don't have to, I was an art history major. I know all about Duchamp, and you weave a lot of science into it, and that's like my little nerdy interest. I read like every layperson's book that explains like what, how far along they are in string theory and special relativity and general relativity and all that I'm a weirdo. But the neat thing was, I don't think you had to know that stuff to really enjoy this book. Like you said, you have friends who had never even heard of Duchamp, and it still works. And I think that has a lot to do with the integrity of the story. And again, I think that ties back to one of the things you talk about in the book, is how art can have aura. And I think it can have an aura of authenticity. And if you're a discerning viewer, you can tell they're just doing this for shock value, or even if it's a really strange thing, you can tell that they came from a genuine place. Yeah. So do you go to a lot of museums? Like how long have you thought about that notion of the aura of art?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I was a kind of art nerd through most of my life, and I would go to all kinds of museums and weird underground art shows, and I did love, I liked following things that seemed really unique and really weird and really singular in some way. That an art, like just like you say, there's a moment when you see something that seems so singular and so of an artist that no one else could have done it, and so unique in that way that it's a thing to behold if it resonates with you. And that's what I look for and try to achieve, I guess, in my own work in some ways, that real sense of uniqueness. And it's not necessarily going to speak to everybody, but it will to, the people it speaks to. I think it really does resonate really loudly.
Sure. And in the end, that's all you can really do is try to do your best to be truest to yourself and who you are as a writer, who the person as an artist. Because if you're trying to do something because it's what's popular at the time or it's what's selling or all that's going to take away that feeling of the aura. It's going to be something that anybody else could have written, and takes away its power. So you were talking about the urban exploration, and Lee goes on these with kind of her love interest, but that's a complex situation. Is it Tommy or Tommy? Tommy. And I sort of found myself thinking about these places. They're almost like what Marcel Duchamp was talking about with like the found object, like what makes something art. If you just come across it and say it's art, is it art? But that idea of these places, at one point they were just an aquarium or, an old museum or whatever. But now, because they've fallen apart a little bit, there's something really beautiful about them. And it sounds like that's something that people do. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
I think that's a really interesting way of looking at it, is that once a building kind of goes into disrepair and goes derelict and stops being useful for what it was built for, it can serve a different purpose. It can turn into a kind of wilderness beauty in a way. It crumbles through the forces of nature, and it becomes a place to explore. And there are tons of people out there who do just that, and they treat those explorations like any wilderness explorer does. And they have, usually it's illegal and they're trespassing on private property, but they're very respectful about the area. They're not graffiti artists. They're not, they don't leave things behind. They don't generally throw parties and things like that. They just go in and they're very careful about not taking anything and except for photographs, and not leaving anything behind, and just seeing it for that kind of crumbling beauty that's
So Lee seems to, and I could have been making my own story, which is what a reader does when they're reading a book, and that's part of it too. But these places really seem to be very soothing to her, almost like a home that she never had. And would you say that's true?
Yeah. So Lee, she kind of finds what I think of as her superpower when she goes into places, because she discovers that she has this real innate sense of direction and orientation. And in the world of people, in the social world, she feels lost, and she feels like she doesn't have a center. But suddenly, if she's in an empty, abandoned factory or something, and even if it's pitch black, she knows exactly where she is and kind of how to orient herself. And that's part of it's a little bit of an impossibility, but within the slightly alternative reality of this world of the book, I think if I've done my job right, it works and it seems real, because it resonates with her. It's empty. She's such an insular girl. She's so inside of herself, and this is a way of another way of going inside of herself, in a way, going into these empty buildings. So much of the book is about the subterranean, is about like what's beneath. And this is
sure. And what's beautiful and what's ugly. Because some of these places you really should, you should be thinking about them as decrepit, but there's some kind of strange beauty about it. And I sort of going off in a mind tangent about that, kind of reminded me a little bit how sometimes you have the advertisement in fashion magazines where it's like the model, but like her makeup is all smeared and it looked like maybe like, she was out all night doing drugs or whatever. And there's something kind of beautiful and sexy about it. Like that kind of, I don't know, like what is that? Why do we find that appealing?
I mean, I think we're all drawn to a bit of edge in that sense, and a bit of the dirty and the underground. Look like what it feels like when we've been all night, doing
Sure. And in that example, but even in the example of like, I was in a harbor and there was like a boat that had clearly gotten abandoned, like just like up on the whatever, like the part of the decrepit dock or something. It was really beautiful. It was really, really beautiful, and part of its beauty was because it was like a little bit destroyed. I mean, I wonder if it's almost like that's what archaeologists do, and I wonder if it's just like, I don't know. I'm trying to pinpoint what it is that is appealing about that, and I can't figure it out.
No, I think it is something like what archaeologists do, and it's not a coincidence that Lee in the book, the one thing she finds, she's like, her aspiration before everything kind of goes to hell is to go to school and study archaeology.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's a stillness about these places, an emptiness that's really kind of beautiful. There's an element of kind of the sublime that's akin to the sublime of nature that artists are used to try and capture in the I guess it was like the 17th and 18th century. There are all these kind of great sort of paintings of nature that were trying to capture the great sublime of nature. But I think there's something sublime about these great monuments that men have created, men, and when they're emptied out and their use value is taken away, and they're just like there's something else.
Maybe it's because you're adding imagination to it, because it's not somebody telling you what it is, it's you going there and experience it and seeing. Anyway, we could probably talk about that forever. One of the characters that I really loved, but I didn't like him at all, but I thought he was really well done, with Steve. So kind of like her stepdad, and he has these noble ideas. He does all like the meditation stuff, and he's really awful to her. And he basically, the way that he behaves basically takes away, like she sort of has a relationship with her mother before then, and then he comes into the picture and he's awful. And I'm just wondering where you got your template or the idea to have this sort of holier than thou character.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of kind of nefarious characters in this book, but Steve is the one who people kind of come away hating. And I grew up in Northern California in the 70s in Marin County. And there were a lot of Steves in my life, and just around me, and even as a kid, I could always see right through the Steves who kind of put on all the trappings of Buddhism and wanting to live a very kind of spiritual Zen-like existence, but really were just pure narcissists and opportunists at heart. And even they probably aren't self-aware enough to even recognize that, and it's almost worse because of it. And so I just drew from those.
You did it well. That's funny. I had a feeling it might have been like either a specific person you knew or a type of person that you knew. And I'm not surprised, because he really captures that idea of it'd be better. He's a jerk. It'd be better if he was just a jerk. He's a jerk who's trying to pretend like he's just so kind and wonderful and peaceful. Not a nice. So that's funny. So I'm not the only one who really didn't like Steve.
No, Steve,
no,
like strikes a chord. with people, which kind of I find delightful.
Yeah, sure. Well, that's what you want to do. But you keep on, using the word resonate, and that's what you want your book to do. That's what's going to make the people that do read it and enjoy it. It's going to have a lot of depth to it. That's what that's what I want to do if I was creating something. So, what are my other? Ooh, I know. I have a good question. So you do this whole thing where you weave art and science, kind of with and then you sort of not decide, but you throw in the idea of well, there's art and there's science, but then there's the metaphysical. And what made you want to throw those things together, I guess, is my question.
Well, I mean, again, those are always my areas of fixation, both art and kind of cutting edge science, especially things like quantum theory and string theory. When it verged out into the kind of fringy stuff about the whole universe is a hologram and weird theories that people come up with. But I was totally delighted when I started researching Duchamp in depth and found that critics had see in Duchamp this connection that when he was working, he was very much influenced by the cutting edge science of his day. And other critics who go through his work and find connections to alchemy and metaphysics. And so I wasn't the one necessarily connecting those dots initially. But then the more I looked at his work, the more dots I found. He's he's an artist who opens his art is so open to bringing into it whatever you want to see there. And so it really allowed me to connect all kinds of dots and make connections between string theory and make connections to alchemy and metaphysics that Duchamp, I'm sure, never intended, but are there to see if you want to see them there. And so the more I looked, the more there became a whole constellation. And that's how conspiracy theories kind of work. And that's what was so delightful about writing the book, is that I started having the mindset of one of these men from Société Anonyme who is seeing within Duchamp's work exactly what he wants to see there. And I started doing the same thing. And I'm like I said, I'm a generalist. I don't know a lot in depth about quantum theory or string theory.
Well, you can't without the math. So.
And I think in some way it served the book that I don't, because I don't have to get into super detail nitty gritty. I just that it makes sense within the world of the book and it isn't taking away from the story to kind of go too deeply into it all.
No, it worked really well. So you're at the University of Chicago teaching fiction. They do a lot of work in theoretical physics. Do you follow it they're doing over there, or how interested are you in that part of the University of Chicago?
Yeah, I've never actually gone and talked to any University of Chicago scientists.
They're right there.
Right there. The one thing that I've just found out, which I think is kind of delightful, was that while I was writing this book, concurrently, University of Chicago is known for the last 30 years, they've got this massive scavenger hunt. It's the biggest, most in-depth, craziest scavenger hunt in the world, literally. But someone created alongside of it in the last 2 years a kind of what's it called? It's like it's an alternate reality game that University of Chicago students get involved in, and they find clues, and there are these figures and characters who will be standing on a street corner there, and they have to go and find a clue and do all this stuff, and it's this big massive real life game that goes on that all involves layers of conspiracy and theory, and it was, when I was reading about it, which was literally a week ago, I found out about it. I was kind of amazed that this was all happening and being invented the same time I was writing the book, which involves a kind of similar system of games, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah, but that sort of fits in with your book too, like sort of chance but not chance, all that stuff, you know. So we're almost ready to wrap up, but I know you teach fiction, speaking still of the University of Chicago. I have 2 questions about that. What is the biggest rookie mistake people who are starting to write do, and what's your best piece of advice?
Let me start with, one of the best pieces of advice that I got as a young writer, and I'll pass it on. I was in my early 20s, and I was writing a novel, and I was just fueled by how great I thought it was and my own sense of brilliance, and it was just going to blow the doors off literature, and it was totally different and totally just amazing, and I finished it, and I went and I found the only person I knew who was a published author with an agent. He wasn't even a fiction writer. It was just my friend's uncle. He had an agent. And I went and I gave him the manuscript. I said, Howard, I finished my novel, and I expected him to like curry it off to his editor like straight away, and my path would be set. And he just kind of looked at it, not unkindly, and told me, "That's great, Gus. Now go write another." And it broke my heart, but it's the best advice anyone ever. Looking back, it's like that first novel is not
awful. It's usually awful. It's usually really awful.
And it taught me a lot about writing, and I learned a lot through mistakes. And believe me, it was basically all mistakes. And it's just writing novels is just about writing novels, and it's just about not thinking that like this one novel is going to get you, set you on the path to your career. I mean, this ReadyMade Thief was my 4th novel written before it finally.
That's a magic number for a lot of writers. I've heard that number before.
Really?
Number 4, yeah. So my final question to wrap up, and it's been a pleasure. I've been excited to talk about you because, like I said, I love this book. Everybody buy it if you're listening. The ReadyMade Thief by Gus Rose. What's the compliment you treasure most about this book?
The compliment I treasure?
Yes, the one compliment you've gotten that really just makes you feel like, okay, I did what I set out to do.
I mean, there's a compliment I keep getting that I really am tickled by, that I really love to hear, and that's that when reading this book, I couldn't put this book down, but I was compelled. I had to keep putting it down to go and Google Duchamp.
Awesome.
And so I love that I was able to make someone interested in and curious about learning more about something that they had no idea that they were interested in, specifically Duchamp, but just in general. Like, I love that being able to make somebody curious about something that they had no idea they were interested in. I mean, I think for me that's like a really cool thing.
Isn't that interesting? Because that's how we started off this conversation, was you being interested in things that you didn't even know about by working in that bookstore.
Exactly.
So the fact that you're doing that for other people has got to be so satisfying. Cool. Thank you, Gus. It has been an absolute pleasure. And we wish you, Book Club Babble wishes you the greatest success with your book. And I hope you write many, many, many more. I'm a fan.
So much. The pleasure's been all mine. This has been
excellent. Thank you so much.